Hi, welcome to CCTV, Center for Media and Democracy Town Meeting Television. I am honored to be joined by Greg Marchildon, who's here today, the Executive Director of AARP, to give us a little rundown on what is going on with caregivers in crisis. Greg, welcome. Thank you. Introduce yourself to the viewers, please.
I'm Greg Marchildon. I'm the AARP Vermont State Director. I've been the State Director here in Vermont since 2005, so quite some time. And AARP Vermont works on a range of issues, public policy and state house related issues, really a range of them. We do a lot of community service work and a lot of consumer education, particularly focused on the area of fraud and scams. And we operate two large-scale community service programs, Tax Aid, which provides free tax assistance to people throughout Vermont, and a program called Driver Safety, which helps older drivers continue to be good, safe drivers as they age.
Great. And Greg, you caught our attention with a recent press release about caregiving in crisis. Tell us what's the situation, what's going on with caregivers?
I mean, this is a long time issue that we have been talking about at AARP for years, and I think perhaps is just starting to catch up here in Vermont and nationally. Vermont's the second oldest state in the country, and we see a huge amount of people providing care for spouses, for aging parents, for siblings, for cousins, for aunts, and doing so because they love them deeply, but also at a significant cost to both their physical health, their emotional health, and their financial health. About 63 million Americans are helping older parents and other relatives get care. And here in Vermont, that number's about 70,000. So in a small state like ours, that's really, really a huge number.
So that's 70,000 people who are doing work on top of their regular jobs from all socioeconomic backgrounds. What does that look like?
It's really key to these are unpaid caregivers, right? So even for a person that might be making a really healthy income, if they need to spend 15 or 18 hours a week or 3 or 4 hours a week providing care, that's disruptive to the workplace, that can be disruptive to their own employment. And for low and moderate income people, this can be the difference of whether these people are able to keep a job that they're in, and figure out how to put food on their plates, get the medicine they need for their own lives, provide for their children. So people have been forced to make very, very difficult decisions that we at AARP don't think that family caregivers ought to have to make.
What are some of those decisions people are making? What are the tough decisions?
Yeah, I mean, if it relates, let's just talk about it as it relates to work, right? So if you're working full time and you are, let's say, a line cook, you're working full time, let's say you're a lawyer, it really doesn't matter what your profession is. If you're called to provide care for someone that you love in an unpaid way, that means you need to leave the workplace. And for some folks, and for some employers, that can be very disruptive. So it has an impact on could have an impact on their employment status, could have an impact on their earning potential. And for lower and moderate income folks who are working more minimum wage jobs or just above minimum wage jobs, this is even more difficult because an hour spent providing unpaid care to a loved one, which they're again doing because they care so deeply, 2, 3, 4 hours away from work, if they're not going to get that hourly wage, can make the difference whether these people can pay rent or not. And this is very, very serious stuff. And we're not paying the kind of attention to it that we need to pay. It's just that simple.
So tell us, Greg, what is AARP proposing? What are some of the solutions and who are the partners that you're working with to approach this?
Well, we work with a range of partners across the state, organizations like the Alzheimer's Association, the Heart Association, Lung Association, just to name a few, frankly, um, who have been working in this space for quite some time. What Vermont does not have that other states do have, or some other states do have, are paid leave programs. So for people to be able to step away from the work that they are doing and be able to continue to receive, forms of payment or some types of salary as they're providing care. So we do not have a paid leave program at all. What we're proposing right now is a caregiver tax credit, which would work much like other tax credits do when you file for your taxes, at the beginning parts of each year. And we know from a survey that we've done recently that 80% of Vermonters approve of a caregiver tax credit to be established in the state. That's Republicans, that's Democrats, and in our state, of course, that's progressives as well. So there's strong political support for it. What there has to be is political will inside the state house in Montpelier and with the governor's office as well. And so far, though a little progress was made in the Senate last year, which we were really pleased to see, the job is still not done, and we're going to be going after it very aggressively again in this upcoming session to make sure that we can get this tax credit done. And I want people to understand that a caregiver tax credit is just a step, a good step and an important step, but not a step that's going to solve this problem that is only getting worse and in very significant ways because of the demographics of our state.
So the tax credit, you said you're going to, the legislative session is gearing up. People are preparing. The legislature will be opening in January. And it sounds like you have plans to move forward. Tell us a little bit about that. What would that bill look like? Does it have a bill number already? Do you have sponsors? How do people pay attention to that?
People will pay attention. The Senate passed a caregiver tax credit bill last year, and it was a good bill, a bill that we thought should have been moved to law. It just sort of ran out of time, like many things do. Um, and so we're currently talking to several members in the House. I'm not going to name names at this point, but we do have some strong supporters in the House for this. And we're going to run, a full-blown advocacy campaign on this. We're going to engage our members. We're going to engage the public. We're going to direct calls. We're going to direct emails. We're going to bring real people to the State House, and we're going to share personal stories. One of the things that we do know here is that if you are an unpaid caregiver, you have a very powerful story to tell, and we would encourage you to reach out to us at aarp.org/VT, where you can see a whole caregiving and caregiver unit we have on our website. And you could leave us your name, and we could give you a call or send you a note, because for people that aren't providing care, unpaid care, it's hard for them to imagine the stress and the difficulties associated with it. And so when people tell their stories and tell them in a personal way, it tends to wake up elected officials in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah. Greg, let's just pause there for a minute and talk about what caregiving is. I have older family members, and my sister and I both help with them now with driving, with getting to appointments, with grocery shopping, with sort of managing households. And, I don't think of it as, I think of these things as, the responsibilities of being part of a family. Just like, having children and raising those children, I felt like those were just the responsibilities of having a family. But as you're talking to me now, I'm thinking, are these caregiving duties that we are taking on? So talk a little bit about that. What's the range that people might sort of think about to understand their own experience?
Well, you certainly named a few, which a lot of people don't automatically, sort of associate with caregiving, which sort of sometimes can bring on a mental picture of sort of sitting bedside with somebody who may be more infirmed. That is also caregiving. It happens as well. but it is those activities of daily living, right? Do you need, if your mobility is limited, do you need someone to help you get from your bed to the living room so you can go sit on the couch and read a book? Do you need someone to shop for your groceries because you can no longer drive? Do you need someone to help balance your checkbook and pay your bills because that has become more difficult? So there are a huge amount of things that would end up on that list of what an unpaid caregiver might or might not do, and that would depend on the person that they were caring for. But it's not all about direct care. It's about a lot of what you said, which are how do you get all these other things done that need to get done when a person cannot do them for themselves. And as you know, we live in a largely rural state. And we have people that live in small communities, 500, 1,000, 1,200 people, may live a couple of hours from a relative. And so it's further compounded in a place like Vermont, in a small rural state where there's not a lot of access to public transportation, and the distances that people may have to travel frankly, to see a doctor, or an unpaid caregiver may have to travel to take care of a family member, can be very difficult. And as we approach winter, as you well know, that becomes more difficult because the winter months are much more difficult for us to travel in. So it's a big, sort of cauldron of issues that just keep stirring and stirring. And then you may feel like you get on top of one of those issues and you're feeling like, okay, we're doing well here, but then two more spring up, a couple of days later. So it has a very unpredictable nature to it too. And caregivers need support. They need support, direct support, and they need to be not just lip service, not just honored for what they do, but we need to provide a paid leave system, a tax credit system, so that they don't lose their job, so that they can continue to provide for their families and be able to provide care for the people that they love so much. So it's a real big, complicated issue, but there are a lot of different policy reforms here that we can put in place that would make a really big difference for people in Vermont. I'd like to say my father passed away almost a couple of years ago. I work for an organization that spends a tremendous amount of time thinking about this issue. But I have caregiving leave. So I don't have to take vacation leave. I don't have to take sick leave. I don't have to take a personal day. I don't have to take unpaid leave. I have 2 weeks of caregiving leave. So when my father really needed me to be there, needed me to take him to an appointment, needed me to get him up and out of the house, needed me to be there because my mother was getting some respite. I was able to do that and not lose wages. We need system support like that for family caregivers throughout our state.
Yeah. Greg, tell me a little bit about what's the cost of supporting our elder Vermonters, folks who have moved out in, sort of past the retirement age into that age where they're no longer driving, they need a lot of support and assistance. Do we have a sense of the cost? Because it seems to me when we're exploring housing options, it's astronomical. And moving out of the personal private home into assisted living care, with a place that there's, transportation options, like, as you said, complicated, but the costs seem astronomical. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Let's unpack a little bit of issues. There's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
So let's just unpack a little bit at first, because there are other issues here in Vermont that further compound our problem with unpaid family caregivers. And you talked about one of them particularly, which is housing. We have a lot of old housing stock. We have, frankly, right now, expensive housing stock, old housing stock, and not a lot of availability. So if you're an older person and you're living in a rural community in a house that you've been living in for 50 or 60 years, maybe paid off and you're paying the taxes on it, but it's most probably not an appropriate house for you to live in alone and for you to grow old in. And so that further complicates the problem, because you need to, the older you get, you want to have people all on, you want to be able to live on one floor, sleep on that floor, cook on that floor, rest on that floor. And that's just not true with a lot of our older housing stock. We're also a state that it really does not have any meaningful public transportation except sort sort of in the Chittenden County core, as you know. So again, access for these for people to get to these places is also very difficult. So those are two other issues that make this hard. But our state's family caregivers, they hold up really a broken system, providing 66 million hours of care every year, and that adds up to about 1.23 billion in unpaid labor annually. That's billion with a B. The problem is profound. There are deep numbers and lots of data to support it. And what we need is some political courage to solve this problem. And we're hopeful that we'll take a step forward on that this year as we move into the 2026 state legislative session.
Great. And are there other ways AARP is advocating? I know there's been some housing bills that have passed through the legislature, and I think about housing credits that could be given for folks that are building elder housing to sort of expand that market. Is AARP involved in other ways?
Absolutely, and we certainly support those types of tax credits going to builders who are looking to build. It's not just affordable housing, but appropriate housing for older folks. We're strongly supportive of other types of programs like home share, for example, which is a program where you're an older person lives in their house, but it's a big house, and they can take someone in who, in lieu of rent, would be able to do the things that you talked about earlier, go shopping for them, run errands for them, housekeep for them, and provide really important company and socialization. So Home Share's got a strong program here in Chittenden, also in Wyndham. There's a new one that's coming along very well in the Northeast Kingdom. There's all sorts of things that we have to do to solutions that we have to get to so that we can fix this problem. But it's just one of those things where we keep kicking the can down the road. And the more we do that, the more complicated the problem is, and the more difficult it becomes to solve.
So it sounds like you have a plan for this upcoming legislative session. For the individual who's listening to this now, what do you want to land in their ears? What takeaway do you want them to hear, and how do they follow up on this?
First thing I want them to know is that if you are an unpaid caregiver, we hear you, we see you, we're working on your behalf very hard. We know how difficult this is, and our hope is that we can make real progress so that we can help solve the problems that we know exist in the system in a badly broken long-term care system. So that's one thing. The second thing that we'd like them to know is that we need your help, we need your support, we need you to contact your state legislators and your state senators and the governor's office and tell them that we need a caregiver tax credit, and tell them that we need a paid family leave program so that the burden doesn't fall on the unpaid caregiver who is caught between a rock and a hard place. So we need their voices and we need their stories.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. And just to follow up on that paid leave program that you're advocating, I'm assuming that's following up on the Vermont Family Medical Leave that was passed, that was an unpaid program. Is there a relation there?
Yeah, I mean, there was one that we worked on a couple of years ago that did not end up moving very far. The governor has a plan that's out right now that you can buy into. I think it's got very low participation, not because maybe the benefits aren't good, but because it's expensive, like most care like this. So in addition to the caregiver tax credit, these kind of paid leave programs can make a huge difference in an unpaid caregiver's life.
Great. Well, Greg, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit of this information. We will be paying attention to what you're doing, and I hope that you'll come back and give us an update as the legislative session proceeds, and let us know how the plan for this caregiver tax credit is moving forward.
Love to come back sometime during the session and give you an update and talk more about this very important issue, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Great. And folks, you can see on the screen there the website for more information And thank you for watching CCTV, Town Meeting Television. For more programs like this, cctv.org. And thank you so much, Greg and AARP, for what you're doing in the state.
Okay, thanks so much.